Hi guys, welcome to this practical overview of the concepts that we studied already in our previous Angular lecture. Just to briefly recap, the concepts were modules, components, and data binding. We briefly talked about directives as well, but that will come in the future with a more in-depth insight. So here we have a tutorial. You can just follow this tutorial on looking up in the Google Pages, in the Angular documentation. There is a section which you can follow the Tour of Heroes tutorial, and you will find this code. However, this is my specific version. As you can see, when you compare with that other version, this is less beautiful, and yeah, I made it on purpose to just highlight the importance of whatever components we have studied and we will study. So it's a little bit easier to grasp what I'm talking about when I say, for example, a module or a component. If you're not familiar, let me walk with the application. Let me walk you through it very quickly. It's a very simple app in which here I have a list of heroes. You can just let's see the first one. You can click on the first hero here, and then I will jump to that specific hero with the details: Super Mister, and the hero ID and the hero power. Mine reading in this case. Well, you can update, save. Well, we haven't updated anything, but yeah, that's the dynamics. Displaying the list of the heroes, you can update some data of the hero, and on the side we have the menu, in which yeah, think of it of any regular menu, just full of links that takes you somewhere. If I click on the first one, what I'm basically doing is requesting the list of heroes. So this is the page for that. And if I click on dashboard, I'm showing just the top heroes, the top 5. And from there, again, you can just click one, and then you will jump to the previously shown picture of details of a hero. That's it. Nothing really fancy. However, we do have a button here, the toggle site nav, and that is yeah, it's extra functionality for usability of your application. You will also have to integrate these kind of tools in your web application. But when the time comes, then we will talk about those extra modules, extra functionality that we just go into importing our applications. Besides that, we do have a section here, the messages section, in which yeah, basically logs the messages based on the functionality or the interaction of your application with the backend or the user. So, for example, the first action that we took, it was yeah, just fetch heroes from yeah, real server. I will walk you through this specifically when we study services, and that's a different concept within the Angular framework. So yeah, let's get started. Let me just get back to the list of heroes. And my first question would be, okay, we were talking about different concepts, right? Components, they define the views. So my first question would be, how many components can you see here? Well, based on the definition of the concepts, what a component is, components basically define a view, right? You normally have a template for each component. So this could be regarded, the DOH section could be regarded as a template, because that's what I see. So that could be a possible answer. When you look at the rest of the application, you can see the highlighted zones. This is a blue zone that could be also a component devoted to just deal with a list of heroes. And this section over here highlighted with a yellowish color, then you could also say this is a different component, right? Even the button over here is something visual on my application, so you can even dare to say this is on its own a component. And below we can have these messages. Well, it says it's a message component, so it indicates that this could also be a component. So that's fine. We can give it a good guess, right, based on what we see on the application. However, I already recommended you to really make use of the nice tools that not Angular provides, but this is a plugin on your browser called Augury, in which allows us to see the anatomy of Angular applications. So let me just, once you install, this would be a part of the menu on your developer tools. You click there, Augury. Again, this is just a plugin. And yeah, this appears. And here we can actually see the component tree. You remember the components in Angular, it's basically arranged in hierarchy. Every Angular application has at least one module, right? And that is the app module. And inside that module, at least you must have a component. And that is called the app component. It's also the root of all the other components. So when I click over here, you can see on top of the hierarchy, the app component in this case. And yeah, my logic, the application data that I'm defining and I'm dealing with, is basically defined on this only app component. This is a very, very small app. So well, I just need one component for this specific list that you have here. But as I said, I have different components. You actually saw different components as well over here for different purposes that we will see when we study a concept, we will see what a certain component is doing, or how is it helping us in our own applications. So I'm going to tell you quickly, there are many different components here, but I'm a little bit curious about what's happening in the data that I was defining my controller. In the class component, you deal with you define your data, your objects. For now, that's going to be our controller. Okay, I'm not talking about different classes and controllers and the models, differentiating them. There's going to be defined our this data. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to just minimize that one, minimize this one. Okay, mat side nav. But one thing I mentioned, I forgot to mention, is this mat toolbar, mat button, mat side nav container. Those are components that I just took imported from a different module that allows me to have this nice navigation over here. And you will have to do that in further weeks. So for now, I can tell you that this component, the heroes component, is inside the app component, inside the mat side nav container, and inside this mat side nav container, which is actually the whole area, including this on the left. I have two components, mat side nav and mat side nav content. So this is the content and this is the side nav, okay? And together these are into the mat side nav container, just to follow the hierarchy. This is not interesting for us now. And in the mat side nav content, I'm expecting to see the code that I was talking about, the heroes component. And that's the one, my application data, the one I defined. So when you click over here, then I'm having this highlighted, only that one. Well, the highlighted, it's not so accurate as you can see, but at least it gives you the idea and where your component is, okay? So that could be, I think it's a bug in Augury. What do we have here? Heroes component, yeah, per hero we have all these, but that's not interesting for us. The most interesting part is like, okay, I want to see the code related to heroes component, because as you know, you know the concept, but let's see how in practice the component itself looks like. And you should expect a class, right? You can jump from here, from Augury, you can jump to view source and to actually see what your component looks like exactly in code. But before heading there, I would like you to also look into this panel, a state section of Augury. Whenever you select a component here, you see the state, and the state is basically whatever you define, the properties that you have, or the data, the application data that you are dealing with in this certain component. Okay, so if we go to app component, we have we go to this specific section, the root component, and I only have the title there as a property, nothing else. Not so much magic. And when you jump into heroes component, then I have two properties. It's a hero service or type object, and inside that hero service you can see whatever is related to that specific hero service. It might look a little bit like a complicated thing now, but don't worry about that, because that's a service. A service itself is a concept in Angular. We will study that later. And then we have the second property in the heroes component, which basically is an array. So collecting objects of what type? Of course, each of those are heroes. So that's how you normally interact, or you could actually debug your application by just looking at the Augury or the anatomy itself via Augury and seeing all these possibilities in here. And this is only the components tree that Augury allows me to see. But we also have a router tree, and the router tree, well, we will see a little bit more in detail in further weeks, and then we explain the routing module. For now, you might actually not have this one if you work in your practical for the first 2 weeks. So you might have not activated this one, and not even this ng module, since you might only be working with the app module, which is the root module. And so don't worry about this. Here I'm working with different modules, and this is another very nice overview of the structure of my modules. I told you that the modules in Angular, how I like to see them, is like awesome magicians, because they are in charge of making a hell of a difficult thing, which is wiring all my code and making it work and nicely, and without me having to worry about this wiring and imports and declarations and here and there. I'm just gonna glue in a very, very simple way, inject perhaps what I need, and as long as that line of code, that injection is all right, then the module can deal with the wiring itself of different modules being imported within a module, or even making use of different components in other modules that you need in your own specific module. So you see, even when I say these words, it starts being like or looking like a tongue twister. But luckily we don't have to worry about this. Just we need to understand the concepts. And this tab here, ng modules. Every module in Angular, it's considered an ng module. So you probably have only this one at this stage, app module. But maybe if that's the case, then you don't even have this whole structure of modules summarizing here. As you advance through the practical, you will see more modules and more things, information appearing in here. What I quickly want to share with you guys is, within a module, you have these important sections: imports, exports, providers, and declarations. Okay. So these three, four sections. Well, I'm gonna just focus on the imports, providers, and declarations. The imports, of course, is the code that you are using currently in this specific module. So wherever you have you need in this specific module, you can whatever functionality features you need, you can import that in the app module in this case, which is the main module that I'm using for my app. And the only module in which I am providing my specific code. All the other code implemented in different modules, like the math, like the app routing module, or like the math toolbar module. These components, some ingenious people already created these awesome components, like you can see here. These are the components, and I can make just use of it. How do I make use of it in my app module? By importing here. So in code, if you just go to the ng to the app module, you will see the imports over there. But I don't need to do that, since Augury while running the application allows me to see all that in a one glance, and that's the pretty thing about Augury. Okay, so I can see in a glance, understand the anatomy of my Angular application, and perhaps even help me debug my application. So those are imports code that I need I'm importing in my own module on my space where I'm coding. Providers, this has to do with the services that I'm consuming, and therefore injecting. In this case, I have a memory. Well, when the time comes, I will let you know what that is. And yeah, the declarations. This is the important part. We have app component, heroes component. You see all these components we are familiar with, because those are the actual components that I have implemented in this module. And this is all I have coded so far, let's say. Okay. So when following the naming conventions, when I create a component, I finish with a component word, component word, component word. See that? So it's very clear that this is a component. Now, when in the future you will import your different modules, you will import features, supporting features in your application, and you will see that some components, you see the declaration here of the math toolbar module, contains two components, math toolbar and math toolbar row. And they are not finishing in components. See that one? So yeah, that is kind of implicitly set in there. But Augury tells me, okay, it's declaring these two, so those are my components. So that's another good thing whenever you're analyzing a specific module. What has been declared, and what has been declared is basically a component. This is very visible. Okay. We will continuously, and I also encourage you to continuously look into Augury, because in the beginning you don't have, you tend to go to the code and see and debug in your code. Rather, I would suggest to first look into the developer tools, go to Augury, analyze a little bit what's going on in your components, and yeah, you might gain some time there. That being said, I think I promised to jump to the view source. Sometimes it's very tedious to go to the source, especially when you are having TypeScript applications, and due to the transpile process, you will need to go, in order to find your sources in the developer tool, you will need to go to Webpack. Oh, let me see, oh no, it's here, I will find. So this would be my procedure to actually jump to the heroes code, heroes component, and finally I click here. See that? And the code it's here. So that's basically a code that I've been working working so far, and but that's a little bit tedious, and sometimes, you know, my short memory is super bad. I cannot remember the path. So if you're using Augury and you're using the components component tree, then I can immediately jump to the source, and voila, I'm right there. Okay, so make use of these tricks. Another thing that we were talking about is data binding. And well, you already know there is a one-way data binding and two-way data binding. What you see here is an example of one-way data binding. You see all the data being loaded, and now it's now it's in RAM memory as objects, and yeah, those are basically the model, right? And the data is being defined normally in a component, and it's being read from there and loaded into the DOM, the document object model. And that's why we see here from component to the DOM. Okay, that's one-way data binding. You can also experiment with the two-way data binding. Let's look into Tornado. And here we can observe two-way data binding. You see that this is a form that I have here, but the form is automatically loaded with Tornado data. Normally you don't have these input boxes loaded with the data itself, but if you do, then we are talking about two-way data binding, because one way is reading from the component, you know, in order to update. I'm going to read from the component whatever is defined there, or from the model, better said, and display this Tornado. So that's one way, from component to DOM, or from model to DOM, better said. And the other way around would be, now the user is interacting and updating this name, Tornado update. Oh, sorry, update. Oh, update it. And then you immediately saw here the result that is being read. As soon as I type, the model gets updated as well with what the data that we provide, and that is from the DOM, what I'm doing here, to the model. So that's the way data binding in action, and that's why one of the main reasons Angular became so popular. So yeah, make use of this. If you ever see the forms nicely when you try to edit or update in your Angular applications, then you probably are, most likely you're using exactly the same approach, and you will learn this next week as well. Okay guys, that has been it. So finally we save it, and then you will see that Tornado is updated here. And well, if you're wondering about the game over, that's a functionality of killing the heroes, deleting the heroes from the application. That's it. That's it guys. See you in the next lecture.